Okay, we are live. Hello, Dr. Maleeka Clary. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, I'm excited to have you on my show. So we talked a little bit off before I hit record here, and an agency contacted me about you, and also with Tiffany Rothman, who's the last person I spoke to, I'm so fascinated by this because this podcast is all about human stories, and
Mm.
what's so interesting is I find out so many interesting things about people. The last one, it was so interesting to hear her mindset and just her go getter attitude. And with you, I read your bio, I read your stuff, and I'm like, oh man, we have so much. We have we're so different, but we have so much in common that this is going to be a very interesting conversation. So I'm really excited about it. So
Thank you.
yeah. So you are a doctor in psychology, is that right?
Yes, a clinical psychologist.
Okay. And in psychology, is there a specific um I don't know what I would say, like is there some sort of specific area of psychology that you tend to focus on when you do your clinical work?
Well, I like all. I mean, if you have anxiety or depression, I like
Mhm.
to help you with that with psychotherapy. But I really do focus on relationships as well and
Oh,
family therapy. And those is the reason because I had a failed marriage.
mm,
And, to me, if I could try to explain some things, what you don't do or what you should not do in a relationship, maybe I can help put back a marriage or before you even get married and kind of think about it before you
mm,
even go down that road. So
interesting.
I really do want to like put relationships back. I do focus on relationships.
Do you tend to focus your work with relationships on an individual or couples, or do you do
It,
both?
I do both. It
Oh,
could be family, it could be couples, it could be just one person. Because sometimes you only have one person that really wants to go.
yeah.
And then if they see that person going to get therapy, then they may come along. But you want to get to know your client first, and then you can bring the couples in together. And sometimes it has to be separate. And it's just like that.
So let me ask you a question on that, because I have another psychologist, or well, I would call him a marriage and family therapist, I think, who deals specifically with personality disorders and kind of focuses on narcissism, and he does couples therapy. And one of the things that I found really interesting is when you learn about narcissism,
Hmm.
you learn there's the narcissist, and then there's a term of reactive abuse. And I had a really interesting conversation with him where I was like, when a couple comes in, how do you figure out who, if there's one person who's the problem, how do you figure that out when you meet them? I mean, does it take time? Do you as a clinical psychologist, when you're talking to a couple, do you ever kind of like, okay, I can tell this guy is the issue, or oh, she's the issue, or is it more of they're both the issue? What do you think?
Sometimes it's different. I mean, when you're talking to an individual, like I said, there might be a time that you would talk to the person who wants to pursue the therapy first,
Mhm.
and then later on you will bring the other person in, or you talk to them separate before you bring them together, because
Mm,
there's always two sides to the story. But I
right.
really like go into further, get to know their background,
Mm,
because sometimes what you don't understand is that it may not be the person, it may be because their upbringing and that's the way they live their life, that was the way they was brought up, so they
mm,
might not see it's a difference. It
mm,
might just be a normalcy in their home, in their household. So if they react a certain way, it's not always a control mechanism or they're being arrogant or something. It could be because this is the way this person was raised. So if their father did it and the father before that, it's a manipulate. It's almost like you're just, it's circular. You're repeating a cycle. So it's really not about, okay, you're wrong.
yeah.
It's where do you get the wrong from? Because if it's almost another example is that if you was raised and you're, young and raised to have wine at dinner, but you're a kid, but maybe that's the way they was raised, and it's a culture. So when you say, okay, my 10-year-old can't have wine, but in maybe where they're from or somewhere else, it was okay. So you can't really say that they're wrong for it. It's the way they was brought up.
Mm,
Now, of course, you can't give a 12-year-old alcohol in the States, here, United States, but
correct.
in other countries, you may be able to do so. So
Yeah.
you really can't, you have to really get down on more than just the surface and get to know somebody. And I really don't call somebody a narcissist individual. I really don't label them
Mm,
until I actually really get all the facts. And the facts is actually getting to know somebody. And it's not going to be when I first meet you. That's
yeah.
not going to happen. At least sections before you even get to know somebody. You got to at least have about 6 sessions.
Wow, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, do you see a lot of, couples that come from different cultures?
Yes.
And, um, do you find that, and the context I'm thinking of is mixed race couples or couples that, you have somebody who came from a foreign country. Do you find that those couples tend to have a more difficult time understanding each other at times?
Well, it depends. I mean, like I said, you have to get to know that person's background. And if you're not willing to be open minded about who you're dating and who you married, it's going to be difficult.
Mm,
And if you are starting to date or you're thinking about marriage, then you need to understand how their intake on, let's say, for example, if you want a big wedding
mhm,
and the person's like, no, we don't really do that. We don't do weddings. We just go get married and there's not a wedding. But if this person Americanized, they may say, well, we like to bring all the family together. Well, the family will be together, but we don't need to have a big wedding. We could just do it at the house and see, and it's already a conflict because you really don't understand that that person may say, well, this is how we were raised, is we bring everybody together, have a big wedding. And this person's like, well, no, we don't do it that way. But what's a marriage? It's still called a marriage. And that's where the disconnect is. You got to understand who you're dealing with. So it's mainly, do they know each other to even be going to get into a relationship? So
mm,
it's mainly just asking, did you ever, when you dated, did you ask these questions? Did you ask it before you, about children? Did you talk about children, having children? Did you have that conversation? So mainly when I'm asking question is like something that you would ask during dating, but some people do not ask a lot of questions. So it's mainly communication is the bracket. It's like the stepping stone is communication. And it doesn't matter even if you're from a different culture or you're, a mixed race going into a relationship. Communication is, at the end of the day, it's asking the questions and making sure who you're dating, who you're about to marry. Did you ask what they want, what their views are? And people don't do that.
mm,
That's the issue here. They
mm,
don't, they want to be married, they want to have a relationship, they want to find love, but you're not asking the necessary questions so your marriage could be successful. When I say successful, you guys to understand each other.
yeah, and I think another thing that's interesting, sometimes what I've seen, and I think about, I had another guy on my podcast recently, who he actually, uh, he got married to a female, but I don't know how he would consider himself on the LGBTQ spectrum, but I think he would say he's somewhere between gay and bisexual. And
Yeah.
so anyhow, he'd never disclosed, to his wife that's was his sexuality, and of course, it manifested itself in probably some pretty unhealthy ways, when they were married, and then when I'm talking to him on the podcast, he was like, "Well, yeah," and so she wanted to know everything, so I said everything, and then she left me, like, 2 days later, like it was a bad thing, and I was kinda like, "Well, if you d you know, if you didn't tell, like, if you woulda told her, 'Hey, I'm attracted to men,' prior to getting married, would you think it would have gone better when that happened, or do you think you wouldn't have gotten married at all?" He said, "Oh, she wouldn't have married me at all," and I was like, "Well, then that's your answer, right? That was a deal breaker for her." So do you see that sometimes in your clinical practice where you have two people who maybe they got married pretty quickly or something like that, and one person wasn't super honest about what they were really dealing with or who they really were, what their likes were. Do you see some of that?
I always experience a lot of situations similar to that.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, when I talk to my clients, it's always about, did you ask about this person's need when you start talking about sexuality? Did you
Mm,
explain that?
mm,
And most of the time, like I said, in a lot of situations, it's communication.
mm.
If you never ask, you no one seems to gonna just voluntarily give you that information.
Sure.
So, it's almost like assumption, because
Mhm,
you don't see the person with a male. You
mhm.
are in the relationship, but you don't see that person with a male. Like, they're not showing attractive tendencies in front of you because you guys are together. So
Sure.
if it's a surprise for someone, it's because it wasn't displayed either.
Yeah,
And there is situations that it's not displayed at the beginning.
yeah,
It's after 5 or 7 years
yeah,
or 10 years in a marriage that you decide you want to change your sexual orientation, and you want to just, you feel yourself attractive to males or attractive to females.
sure.
And male versus female both ways, or I mean, it's like that. It could be that way too. It's not necessary at the beginning. And I think sometime what I realize with some clients, it's almost like trying something different. After
Mhm.
being in a relationship for 15 years, now I want to try something different.
Sure,
Now, can we say that that's bisexual, or can we just say that now you want to try something different? Is an experience.
sure.
So you're like experimenting,
Yeah,
because you have some people that, maybe if you have a black couple, I'm okay with being with a black person. 10 years later, you want a Hispanic person.
mm,
You might That's different still.
yeah,
It doesn't always have to be same gender, but that's still different. And it also could be experimenting. See,
yeah,
that's another thing what people misunderstand, because not every time a person is, it's bisexual. Oh, that's my preference. Now that I tried that, that doesn't always mean that they prefer that. There's a difference.
yeah,
Sometimes it's experimenting and trying it and say, well, I tried it. I'm okay with that, but I rather this. It's because you tried it. So I do have a lot of clients that like to try things and mention about it, and some of them are trying to still, or they struggle with that identity in that area.
yeah. So when you have that, and it's just so funny, to think about, 20 years ago, this would have not have it would have never crossed your mind that this was gonna be something that's an issue that you gotta consider when you're getting into a relationship, but, um, so when you're dealing with these cultural differences or these sexuality differences or things of that nature, what would you say is, like, if you were to give us some recommendations on how to navigate that, what do you see in these cross-cultural couples, that helps them be in a successful relationship?
And and it's always going to be communication,
Yeah.
because if you don't have it, you're not going to be successful.
Uh-huh.
If you A lot of people, they get together in relationships, it's always, I like what you like. Oh,
Mm,
I can do that. It's yes, yes, yes. But it's
sure.
really not yes, yes, yes. How long is yes, yes going to last? I
Yeah.
mean, it's gonna last what? After the year is done? Some
Sure.
people are like 6 months, and now I want to be real. And you know what real is? It's, I want to be who I am.
Right.
So if you're going to be that person, you're gonna put a show on at the beginning, then you might as well say forget the show and start asking questions at the beginning.
Sure.
And I think I see that more in older couples
Mm,
versus younger couples. And
mm,
younger couples, they're not going to ask you.
right.
They're just going to go with the flow. They don't have a lot of communications to asking what's important to you,
Right.
and what's important to you, and what is this. I mean, like if you have to go back and say, okay, was this an issue back in the days? It was an issue. It really was. It's just people weren't talking about it.
Sure.
I mean, you had mixed race. It was an issue. Then
Yeah,
no one talked about it. It
sure.
was just there. And
Yeah.
and it was like they just didn't have the conversations now, because the world is what it is now, that people are feeling mental illness is like really high because they are keeping things in, and they're feeling like depressed because of it.
Mhm.
And so now it's just, it's coming out as an explosive instead of coming out as, look, I'm bisexual, or I like another race and I want to marry this person, you know. It's
Mm.
coming out differently now
When
because
you
that.
see some sorry to interrupt, but when you
Mhm.
see somebody who's, like, in a mixed race couple, do you find that, like, for example, I know of a couple, in my lifetime, I've been friends with, a few couples that were mixed race, and it always seemed like the people who it seemed like the people who had the problems was, like, one of the people's couple's parents or, like, a sibling, you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, if it was a white guy and a black girl, like, the
Mhm.
black girl's father had a problem with it, or, like, or, like, if it was, there I even remember one when I was on my mission for my church in Indiana where he was talking about how, you know, for some reason that they didn't they the parents were like, I think he was gonna marry an Asian girl, and the parents were like, "Well, the baby's not gonna look like us," and it was just kinda like one of those things, and it seemed like it was coming from, like, outside. Is that kinda what you see too?
Yeah, a lot of situation is the family too. But
Mhm,
if you want, it's a blended family. I mean, you want to bring the family together, then you value their opinions, but then there's situations that there is people that just like, love me or not, but this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be with.
yeah,
And sometimes it's like that too. But
mhm,
it is a situation. And I think and I remember having certain people that when you have a race, like for a man who's black and they see a black woman with a white man, I think for them, and as a father, and this does come up, they're looking at how slavery is and
mm,
how the black man always had a disadvantage. And they're not looking at the fact that it's not like that now in this situation. I mean, they might say things are very similar, yes, but this is your child, daughter, being with this man, and he didn't do that to her,
mm,
and she's not his slave. This is a person he wants to marry. But see, that's when you have the problem, is when maybe older black men, or cannot get over the fact that there was a mistreated treatment years ago, and they bring it into these two people's relationship now.
mm,
That's the problem there. But
mm,
if, like I said, it's a modern situation now, that I've seen couples, if you want to be a part of our family, you have to accept the person I love. And I see that now. And I provide psychotherapy to a lot of family members too, because what it is even though they are conditioned, because this is what it is, it's conditioned,
mhm,
and they need help to try to change their thinking patterns. And
mm,
it's not easy. It's not easy just to say, hey, I'm not going to be that way, when that was towards part of your upbringing. I
sure,
mean, you've seen the worst probably. There are some people, and I never even experienced. There's some people that seen his colors and his white. You cannot eat from there or go there, or you have to go in the back. There's people still that remember this.
mm,
So to me, it's hard for to change that out of that person. But it's still doable, because some of those people, they seek therapy so they're able to try to change it. It's like having a habit. It's
mm,
not easy to stop smoking,
mm,
just like it's not easy when you've been up your upbringing and you had some conditions that, was something that you wasn't able to do, and then you see this, it's
Mm.
hard for you to take that, but it's doable. And those are the people that's in my chair who wants to change it and accept it, because here's the outcome of it: either
Mhm.
you do, or you're
Mhm.
going to lose the child who is an adult.
Yeah.
Which one is important? And that's, I say, which one is important? The love for the child who's an adult now, to say we don't want to be a part of you. And even if we have children biracial, we don't want them to be a part of you, because you're still setting your ways.
Mhm.
And most of the time, it takes time, but it comes together. And long as the family is trying, it can work. And don't get me wrong, there are some that it may not work,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it is what it is. And these two people will have to just move on
Yeah.
and
Now
live
I
their
under
life.
well, now I understand you have a talk show, the,
Yes.
Dr. Maleeka Clary show, right? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and this, it's about, bettering a quality of life through positive psychology. What's positive psychology?
Well, it's all different. I mean, you know, we have so many negatives when you talk to people. And if I talk to you about something I want to do, and if if a word come out of your mouth and say, you shouldn't do that, it's going to take you too long. Well, that's not positive to me.
Mhm.
More or less is positive is that, you could do anything you want to do.
Mhm.
Now, how long is that? I mean, and when I say positive, I mean just as simple as that. I think we have so much negative in this world, negativity, that we forgot to be kind to each other. We
Well,
forgot to uplift each other because we're so busy taking each other down. It's so bad that you can't tell, even though you don't, a friend, you can't sit up there and say, I have a dream, I want to be this. Well, I don't well, I don't think so. You're too short for that. There's
mhm,
no constructive criticism, but there's no positive in there either. And
sure.
then so it's always negative. And I think the reason why we are in this position now, that we're having such a big thing in mental illness and depression and anxiety, is because we keep on hearing negative. No one know how to uplift each other. You know what if you don't, it's this saying, I always get these metaphors wrong, but I hope I get it right now. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. That's
Yeah,
probably be the best thing to do,
yeah,
because everyone, and I mean not everyone, but a lot of people, they have something to say about somebody else trying to do something. And sometimes it's because they may have a dream, and you don't have enough confidence that you can even do that, so you stopping somebody else to do it, and
sure.
that make you feel good. It's almost like with that other metaphor, misery likes company.
Yeah,
And that's what I see what's happening now. And I might have to say this: it is not just your friends, it's your family. Could be your mom, could you be your dad, where you know that these are the most biggest people in your life, and they're tearing you down, saying you shouldn't even do this, and then you're miserable
yeah,
because of somebody else said something and you took it with you. I mean, you took it and you kept going with it, and you didn't let it go.
yeah,
And so positive is coming in the circle and have something uplifting to do, to say. And I like to try to say, yes, you can. If you don't want to, it's your choice. And I don't like the words fail. People say, oh, I failed.
mm,
No, there's another word. Maybe you changed your mind.
sure, sure.
I mean, it doesn't. It's not necessarily a failure. You could change your mind. I know a lot of lawyers and doctors and musicians and actors and actresses, filmmakers and directors, and switch. I mean,
Yeah,
I have a movie that I want to say 161 people in the movie, and
mhm,
there's some doctors and lawyers that's in the movie, and
mhm,
they're acting, and
yeah,
some of them are acting as a lawyer. But you're thinking about it like, hey, this is you could change things. And so like I said, I really want people to have positive, and know what positivity is, because I
yeah,
think when you're around people and we talk so negatively, we forget even how to talk positively.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring that up. I was just mentioning to you, I had Tiffany Rothman on uh my last podcast, and it was so funny because here this woman, it actually was a big lesson to me on what you're saying. I call it positive mindset. You call it positive psychology. It's the same thing, but like,
Hmm.
but she comes from South Vietnam. Her dad is the last minister of defense in Southern Vietnam before Northern Vietnam took it over, which started the Vietnam War. He gets put in jail 3 times, sent to a concentration camp. So he sends her and her mom over to America. She doesn't speak English. She has a learning disability. She comes over here at 12 years old, and it was just instilled in her that she has to get an education. So what does
Mm.
she do? She goes and gets a I think she calls it a psych D. It's like a PhD in psychology or something of that nature.
Yes.
And then she gets an MBA. And when
Hmm.
I ask her about it, I asked her, I said, "What do you think is your biggest failure?" And she's like, "Oh, I think my academics." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, my it just takes me a long time to learn
Hmm.
these."
Yeah.
But then I was like, "Well, how did you accomplish these things in academia?" And she's like, "Well, I had to." Right. And it was like, it was so interesting to me, that mindset of I have to do it, because I was sitting there thinking to myself, I was like, if this woman came over here and never got a degree in anything, just worked some menial job, did those things, nobody would think anything different, because it's like, well, what was she expected to do? She's got a learning disability. She doesn't speak English, all these things. But because in her mindset, it's something she had to do, there was no alternative. She accomplished amazing things, considering, right? And it just goes to show, like, maybe that's not necessarily a positive mindset per se, but it's so interesting to me how, if you believe you can do it, how much you can do. I mean, I don't know how you probably have seen these people who are just, everything is negative. They're just always negative. They don't believe anything. You ask them, I'm like, "Oh, well, why don't you do this?" "Oh, well, I've only got one. My wife and I only have one car." "Well, why don't you take a bus?" "Oh, the bus, I can't take the bus." "Oh, I can't. I've got this kid. I've got, this thing." "Well, I'm ADD, so that makes it hard too," and all these things. And it's like, you've already lost. You've already lost before you even try. How do you switch that?
Well, who is in your social surroundings to help you think like that? That
Mm,
could be a start, because,
yeah.
like I said, it's always someone else is
Mhm,
pushing it. And when you said about the individual that you're talking about, she had to do it. It wasn't what she wanted to do. Even
mhm,
though she completed
yeah,
those degrees, it's what she had to do. So if you had to do it because somebody else is telling you you got to do it,
mm,
then it's not something you want to do. It's something you did
mm,
because you had to do it in those eyes. She
mm,
probably could have did something else, that if she wanted to do it, then she would have identified it as something else, of
yeah.
something I want to do.
Well,
So
that's another thing about her that I thought was really interesting too, was that, so she retired. She was a school psychologist for 25 years and retired, and now she's pursuing an acting career. And I found that so fascinating. And I want to talk to you about this too, because you're a jack of all trades. I mean, you're doing psychology, you're doing a talk show on psychology, you've done some work in the judicial system, you're a human rights activist,
yes,
and you act. And I
yes.
was so impressed because this other woman, when I met with her, with Tiffany Rothman, she was like, she's middle aged when she started. I mean, she had done some classes and she had done some theater, but really full-time acting. And she's
Mhm.
doing great. And it sounds like you have a very similar path. Am I right?
Yes, but I started at 13, but
Oh,
I
okay.
got back out of it. Like, I probably left, I might have been 17, 18. I left the industry, 18, 19, something like that.
Okay. And then you
Mhm.
came back later.
Yes, and probably 2016, I want to say. I think
Okay.
so.
Okay. So tell me, well, then that in the entertainment industry, and I know that in your talk show you talk about navigating the industry. So you were essentially a child actor, and then now not. Tell me the difference.
Well, what happened to me is that when I was in, I want to say, was it middle school? Was it middle school? Yeah, I think middle school. I auditioned for a play, but I actually was a cheerleader, and I used to dance. I love dance, so I dance. Used to be a choreographer as well.
Mm,
So, but I cheerlead, and then played. I think I auditioned for a play at Harriet Tubman, and
mm,
my director thought I was amazing,
mm,
and I end up doing very well. And she recommended me to go to some type of drama. It was like a drama course or something. And I went and I liked it. And I was like, oh, maybe, I should do something like this. It wasn't nothing I went to school for or anything like that. I just went, did audition for recommendation of my director in the elementary. Yeah, it was middle school. And from there, I just would go to New York because I'm from Boston,
mm,
and I would just go audition in New York or any auditions in Boston, and I'll just do like modeling or something, like, because I model too, and do fashion shows and do like independent gigs or anything that I can get at that time. Mind you, I'm in my teens,
sure.
so I'm just trying to do whatever. But I believe I might have stopped like the early 20s, and I say
Mhm,
maybe 22. And the reason why I stopped is because even though I did shows, I used to do radio, I did a lot of things in my T. They had some type of broadcast of students, and I did that. I mean, I did a lot of things even for a short amount of time. But what would happen when I had this other talk show? It was called Fat Video Vibe or Dialogue. I didn't like the fact that because of my looks and being a female too, at that time, I'm only speaking for myself because I am a female, because it can happen to males too, as we know, because things are coming out now. But I was more taking advantage. So it's like, if you want to do this, you'll do this. And I
mm,
didn't want to sell my soul. So I
yeah,
left the industry. I mean, it was happening too often.
mm,
Either they would take photos of me. I would get the person who's doing the camera work will come on to me in different ways and want me to be more expressive. And I was just like, I'm expressive enough. I don't need you doing this and doing that.
sure.
And it was to a degree, is it was happening too often that
Mm,
I didn't like it. And I was just like, if this is what it takes to do this, I don't want to do this. I don't feel like I have to sleep with somebody. Don't get me wrong. There's some people that is attracted to your director or the producer. The actress could be attracted to the manager. But this wasn't the case. I wasn't attracted to this. Was just really, you get me ahead of the game here and
yeah,
helping me along. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to get it that way. And
mm,
it's just something that just kept coming in. So I stopped. And
wow.
then
Now, was that real quick before you go into the next part of that, let me ask you, was that happening the whole time, or did you see that happening more as you kinda came of age in your 16, 17, 18, or was
um
it the very beginning?
it was always there.
Wow.
It was just got worse. It
Yeah.
just got worse, and as I was developing, it just got worse.
Yeah. Man,
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
bad. Do you think that now you've came back as of 2016, uh, and I don't remember exactly when the Me Too movement started, but that was right around, I think, the time, right? How's the industry changed, or has it?
Well, I think people are coming out more so,
Yeah,
and people are speaking up for themselves. But I
sure.
didn't come back because of that. I was never really going to come back to the entertainment industry. I
Mm,
loved it, and I did, and I really did. I When I talk about the entertainment industry and I taught college students, I will always incorporate like role play
mm.
into my teaching. And all my students, they really didn't know I was an actress before. And they always, oh, you should be actress. When I kind of like, yeah, I did that.
Like, "Oh, I
Y-
am actually,
Yeah,
yeah." Yeah.
exactly. But they loved it. I always had a full
Mhm,
attendance. So that, because I brought life, like just role play on things that they want to do with their project. And so it kind of made me miss it. But that's not the reason why I went back. I went back, and I have to say, because you're an attorney, and it was about and I'm a human rights activist.
Mhm.
So I was married to an attorney. I got divorced, and it
Mm.
didn't go well, but I live in Indiana now, in Carmel, Indiana, Hamilton County.
Oh, I'm
And
very familiar.
mhm.
I served my mission for my church in Indiana.
Oh, you
The mission
did? Which
the
church?
mission home is in Carmel. I'm a Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints Mormon.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so actually one of my best friends, the mission home is in Carmel, and one of my best friends in the world, he lives in Carmel. And
Oh,
so
he does?
for
Oh,
me, I served I was in Indianapolis for a while, right over by like 56th Street, kind of the
yeah, I know
rough.
where that is. Mhm.
Yeah, and then I spent some time down south in Columbus. And then up north to Huntington, which is about 30 minutes south of Fort Wayne, and then the last part in South Bend. So
Okay,
I
I
was
think I've
all
been
over
there
the state.
once.
Yeah, yeah, I went over the whole state, so I'm very familiar with Carmel. Anyway, that's interesting. So you live in Carmel.
Yes, Carmel, Indiana, and long story, and it's based on the movie,
Mhm,
okay? And what happened to me is I got married. Marriage just didn't work. I mean, we both wanted to go whatever way, but unfortunately, he was very emotional, more so that he wanted to use it against me. And because I'm not a local to this state,
mhm,
and he's a lawyer, he has friends who's judges and lawyers. So I got mixed up with the good old boy network. And in
mm,
Hamilton County, you have elected officials there. So they pretty much do whatever they want to do.
mhm,
People speak up. But there's a lot of people that didn't want to speak up because they
mm,
intimidated.
mhm,
I'm from Massachusetts, and to be honest with you, I've seen a lot of things in Massachusetts that I feel like I could speak up anywhere. I don't care where I'm at. And I
mm,
just, what they did, I already seen stuff in Boston. So I'm not fearful of that.
mm,
So
mhm,
I spoke up on some things. But when you do that, you have to be ready for the punches that's coming next. So
mm,
my divorce went like the good old boy. Everything was going his way, everything they did. So, long story, I had to get rid of a lot of judges, removed them, filed motions, 53A, I think, or 51A, something like that, to remove a lazy judge motions.
mhm,
And people just didn't do that here. They didn't do that. They were scared
sure,
to, even a lawyer was like, nah, you don't want to do that. No, I don't care. Well, you know what? I like that you represent me, but you can get off and I'll do pro se and then I'll do it. I mean, because I didn't want to hurt anybody else's reputation because they work here. I feel like, what you gonna do to me? But
right.
yes, so they did a lot of things, but one thing they did, and I'm Christian, so I believe in God, and I do not believe that if a child is want to be baptized, that is looked as a heinous thing. In
Mm,
2016, I want to say, me and my ex-husband and myself, we never had it in our decree that we could not baptize our child. First of
mm,
all, you can influence a child to be baptized or influence them to go with other religion, but you still can't choose their religion. Why? Because they still a human being. They have a right as a person to pick their own. That's all we could do. But my children, I have three, I only have one by my ex-husband, and he wanted to be baptized because we go to Northview Church. He wanted to be baptized. They was doing a open baptism,
mhm,
and my other daughter jumped up and my son and said, I want to go. And I was like, I always have Bible. Like we always go to church. We always talk about Bible. We always do stuff. So I'm not surprised that he wanted to do it. And I was okay with it. Go ahead. And he did. Now, he might have just wanted to get dipped in the water, but
right.
still, he did it. And it was great. Now, my
Mm,
other daughter didn't do it yet because I have three, but she did it the week after. She had to think about it. But still,
mhm,
that's okay. I don't force no one to do anything. But here's the thing. He did it, and then that was like 2 years later. My
mhm,
ex-husband throws this in for a cheap shot, say, "Oh, she got my son baptized without asking." I didn't have to ask nobody because
mhm,
in our decree, we don't need to ask. That's not something we had to ask.
sure.
But they did some tricketry in the court system. They did a lot of bad things to me, and I was going to go to jail in 2016
Oh, wow.
because I allowed my son to be baptized. I was going to jail for 24 hours. I had to report the on Friday to go to jail. It just a bunch. That's one thing they put, but that's a bunch of stuff that did not make sense. So anyway, after that, I had protests. I got on my knees. I just remember getting on my knees and asked them, I don't know what to do. This is weird to me. Why would you do this? But they just want to hurt me. My ex-husband's emotional because of the divorce. They have been did it. They have some other angry issues towards me because I fight back. I take The law says if you don't believe about a decision, you can appeal. You
Right.
have a right to do that. I take all my options and I do it. I appeal. If it's overturned and you got to go, you got to go. If it's a motion and you don't answer in 30 days or 31, whatever, 45 days, you got to go. I have a right of those. Those remedies are there for the civilians like myself. I didn't do anything wrong, but did what had to do. So what I did is that, and then boom, I protest by myself for a day, and then other people I knew started protesting with me. And the judge that did that, I filed a tort claim against him too. Now I
Hmm.
know he had immunity, but I didn't really care. I filed because there's some things he did that wasn't appropriate either, what he said to me. And it was some racial issues that he also said, and some things that just discrimination and all these things that he said. Well, he recused himself the second day that I protest. And
Hmm.
then I didn't go to jail because I got rid of that judge, or I removed him and got a special judge. And that situation was moot. Nobody even did anything. So the special judge said, well, I would never put somebody in jail for that. That didn't even happen. So it ended up being moot. I never went to jail. But I ended up in Hamilton County, probably remove about, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 judges. I actually got a change of venue, which is very hard to get out of that county because it was so much bias and everything. And then yeah,
Sounds terrible.
it is. And I made a movie about it.
Yeah. So tell me what the movie's called.
Three Corners of Deception.
Ah, that's the one. Okay.
Yes, it is.
And so you made that movie, and is that the one that you said there was over 100 people in it with you?
161 people.
Wow,
Yes.
you had doctors and lawyers in that movie.
Doctors and lawyers and actors and actresses and
So,
engineers to down to servers.
so, so three corners of deception. That it was a basically kind of a based on your story of your divorce.
It was based on it. Yes. It had the divorce and I want to say drama, romance, because
Hmm.
it wasn't always like that. So you have to take it to how it actually happened. It was a lot of deception in the movie, and the situation, it was very deceptive. So I didn't really camouflage how it really was, but as you know, the movie was 2 hours and 19 minutes, but you can't explain something that at that time probably was 10 years in. So
Sure.
there's no way you could do it in a 2.5 hour
Uh,
movie. It's just not.
it's
Can't do
interesting
it.
what you brought up about racial bias in Indiana because I didn't realize um, until I'm from California, so I didn't realize really how different it was in Indiana. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Indiana is the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan. You
Yes,
know,
I didn't know that either. I did not know that.
and I didn't really see how serious it was until I went to South Bend because when I was there, this is in 2001 that I moved to South Bend. I was there for about 7 months. And when you get up there, first of all, it was like the dead of winter. And I remember I remember when I was transferred up there, I remember going to the place where I was going to transfer or to go to the place where I met up with the guy I was going to transfer in with. And they were like, I don't know who you made angry to have to go up to South Bend in the dead of winter, but you're going to be cold. And it was, but it was interesting because everything kind of north of Notre Dame is very like rich, white, Catholic, and then everything south is kind of like urban projects. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it's
Yeah.
very segregated.
Yeah.
And and I'd never really seen anything like that. Out here in California, like, it's hard sometimes for people here in California to really like you'll hear people talk about racism out here and things like that,
Mhm. Yeah.
microaggressions and things like that. But it wasn't until I got out there where I saw some like real hardcore racism. You know
Yes.
what I mean? I mean,
Mhm.
like where you'll see people actually say no question racist stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like no way you could say like, "Oh, they didn't really mean that." You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't really what they meant. No, it was dead on, and it was kinda shocking, I mean,
Yes.
it's really so I gotta imagine that some of that does probably feed into the judicial system, and you may appreciate this as a human rights activist, had this conversation with people. It's so hard for some people to realize this, but, I remember having a conversation with somebody about the you've heard the term systemic racism. And it's
Mhm.
so funny to talk about that because you know, people think like I've heard some people whenever I have this argument with people, and these are intelligent people, they'll say, "Well, show me a racist law." And they don't understand that that is just one of the 3 branches of government. When you say
Mhm.
like, "Where's the racist law?" Well, sure, maybe Congress didn't pass a law that said a certain race isn't allowed the same opportunities or they get harsher sentencing than a different race.
Mhm.
But the thing is there's a Congress, which is the one that creates the law, and then there's the executive branch and the judicial branch, which enforce the law and interpret the law. And the police are part of the executive branch, and the judges are
Mhm.
a part of the judicial branch. So if the police are disproportionately arresting a certain race or pulling them over or charging them for crimes that they're not charging another race for. And then judges are sentencing more harshly a certain race over another one for the same crimes.
Yeah.
Then even if the law is not on its face racist, those are still parts of the system that is systemic. And
Mhm.
and it's, but it's interesting to hear that there would be people out there who don't understand that. Now, as a human rights activist, what are the kind of where's your focus lie in human rights? Like, is there some specific,
You
cause?
know, it's mainly what I know of the law and what people are going through.
Mhm,
And it could be divorce, it
mhm,
could be, labor law, it could
mhm,
be it could be any housing, it could be anything. If I have the knowledge, I'm going to help.
mhm.
And that's basically what it is.
So are you working with a specific, like, group, or is this just something you do freelance on your own?
Yeah, this is something that I have a lot of people that I know, like, people reach out, they're reaching out to me all the time, and it's
Mhm,
from different areas.
mhm,
And so I have a good network. So if I don't know something, I'll go ahead and, go and type and figure who I know that might know more and start asking for the person that's asking, and I would
mhm,
give them. Now, if I know some constitutional rights, or you can do this, it might be something about landlord or something, and they might not know their rights. Like, no, they have to go to court, they have to give you 14 days, they have to do this. And then, and that's another advocate way that I can help people, because they don't know their rights. Or if it's contracts and the limit law, or if you bought a vehicle and you pay a certain amount of money, they may not know about the limit law. Not every state honors it, but there's a lot of states that do. If you pay over $1,000, stuff like that. Or, I mean, it could be anything that I know. And if I don't know, I'll research it. And if it's into entertainment, or what you're supposed to get, for a contract, or if it's anything, or working related, or if it's compensation or something, or even if it's workman's comp or something that happened. Some people think that, oh, they got this doctor, I should go to theirs because they're saying it. No, you also could go to yours as well.
yeah,
There's things people just don't know.
sure.
And so I help in a lot of situations in every area, whatever I can. Like I said, if it's not something I don't know, then I go research it and see who I know that they may know.
It's funny what you bring up about people not knowing their rights. I was really surprised. I did an internship at a DA's office. I thought when I was in law school that I was gonna be a prosecutor. That was what I thought I wanted to do. I really just wanted to do trial work. I knew I wanted to be in trial, and I just knew they did a ton of trials, and I thought put bad guys in jail, that's a win-win. But what I found so interesting was I don't know how many times we would get like a report, a police report on an incident where a guy had drugs in his car or illegal guns in his car or something illegal going on in his car, and the cops pulled him over for a traffic stop, and the cops like, "Can I search your car?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." And then they find all this stuff, and I'm sitting there and I'm just like, "Okay, you got this stuff in your car. Why are you letting them look through your car?" Or for example, like a lot of people don't know this, even if the police want to search your car because they can use this whole reasonable suspicion of a gun or something of that nature to
Probable cause.
probable cause for to think you have a
Hmm.
gun. That doesn't mean they get to search the trunk. You know what I mean? And it's like
They
they
need
don't
a search
know that.
warrant.
Yeah, and so you sit there and then so there were so many times where I would be like, I'd ask the defense attorney, I'd be like, "Why did the guy let the cops check the car?" And
Because
he
I
just
was intimidated. That's why.
yeah, and I didn't know I could say no, right? And I was just like,
N-
"Man," you know what I mean?
But
Eh
you see a lot of those situations occur. I mean, look what happens. I mean, you really think people are going to be easy to say yes? I mean, no. When you're seeing something that's on social media that average civilians is getting beat up and killed. I mean, it's scary. I mean, it is scary.
Mhm,
So I don't know if I'm more likely to say no,
mhm,
because I don't know what people are doing. And
yeah,
even to be on law enforcement, I don't know their mindset. I
mhm,
don't know if no is like, okay, well, we're getting in here now. Now you resist, and you don't know. So
mhm,
I don't know if he did, if, no wasn't the best answer, even though he had all that stuff.
mm,
But I don't know if yes would have been, no, you can't do that. And yes, I know my rights.
mm,
But couldn't he just detain him right there and say, okay, well, we're going to get a search warrant? There might be some 24-hour judges available, and they can get one easy still, because they are have those video ones that the judge could get a sign off on a search warrant. And I believe it don't have to be that long. They
yeah,
could get one. I mean, it's just how quick they can get it, but I'm also certain they can get one.
yeah, well,
But
it's an interesting dichotomy, the whole system is so interesting, and look, there are I'm not anti-police by any means. I do believe that the police are important, and
mhm.
they serve an
Yes.
important right. I've utilized their services.
Yes.
But it's interesting when, you hear, I remember hearing at the DA's office one time a cop saying something along the lines of, "If you suspect somebody of doing something, just follow them in the car for a little while. Eventually, they'll do something that you can pull them over for." And I just go, "Man, like, that mindset is pretty scary, right?" Just, it's an interesting situation, and so when
It
you're,
seems intimidating. That's what it
yeah,
is. When you have a cop in back of you and you're like, oh my goodness. Some people are intimidated to the fact, and not always the fact that they're doing something, just like, why is he in back there? I mean,
mhm,
I used to have racial profiling all the time. I always been racial profiled, always, in Boston, and even when I came here, I did. And I think, and it's weird because
can you real quick before you go on, can you explain what you mean by you were racially profiled? Like, you mean like
it's the
they
type of car you have, and
Oh,
they're like looking at that shouldn't be you in the car. And
oh, I
it,
see what you're saying.
yes, so they never know, and it's always seems to be like a big car or a very luxurious car, and they would think that either male or somebody who's selling drugs or what are you doing to have this type of car? I've been asked some really interesting things, and I've
Yeah.
been stopped for really crazy that you wouldn't even think. It's like, why did you stop me? There's
Yeah.
other ways to do that. I mean, I think and I think this one is little funny, but it is and is not. I have to say, here in Indiana, I did get stopped one time. Well, I got stopped probably a couple of times, but it didn't plan into anything, which is great because I talk and I'm like, why? One time I thought it was really interesting. I got stopped because the guy wanted to talk to me, but he flicked his lights on and I'm driving. And it's like, well, he stopped the vehicle and I felt like, why is this person flicking their lights? I didn't think you could do that. Flick your lights on, and even if you're trying to talk to someone as
Mhm.
a personal, well,
Mhm.
that's what he did. And I didn't know that. And I said, listen, I know you are racial profiling me. And this is exactly what I said to him. I know that's what you're doing. And he mimicked me, but he's like, um, you know I'm doing that. And I said, yes, because my car could tell me how many miles I was going, and I have a little camera around here, and I know that's what you're doing. I'm from Boston, and I know what that's about. And I think it's funny now because I actually is a good friend of mine, but I did not know. That's a funny situation, but there's some other situations it's not that funny for other people. But in
Yeah.
Boston, I did get racial profiled, and some of it wasn't. Some I had to go and take somebody to court and then do the eternal fears on them, and
Yeah.
got out of it that way with them.
Wow.
Sometimes it's really deep because I've heard, "Oh, isn't this your man car?" And this
Uh,
is exactly what the person said, and I'm like, what? Why wouldn't it be not my
why
car?
wouldn't it be your car? Yeah, that's it's interesting. I've been in experiences where I have been in a car that was pulled over with with a group of black men, and then I've been in a car without black men, and it
Mhm.
is a very different experience. It's
Yes.
it's interesting, I share this story. I don't think I've shared this on the podcast before, but I've shared it with a few friends. There was a time where I was driving from California to Wyoming, and so that's about a 12-hour drive, and I started, I started in the mid-afternoon, so I wasn't gonna get there till about 2 in the morning, and, so I'm hauling. I mean, I'm hauling in my truck, and, I'm going out to Wyoming. I'm a gun owner. I threw some guns in the car. I threw some, bullets in the car, because wide open spaces out in Wyoming, you could shoot. I
Yeah.
have a California legal, rifle and things like that I was gonna take out there and shoot, and a crossbow. I have, like, all this stuff in my car, and I'm wearing a leather jacket with a shirt that just says I have a wrestling friend, he calls himself the Handsome Devil, and his shirt says, "Devil may grind." It's got a big devil on the front. You know what I mean? And I don't care because 'cause I'm just driving by myself, right, for 12
Yeah.
hours, so I'm not, like, thinking anything. Well, it's about midnight, and I'm in the middle of somewhere in Idaho, and I get pulled over, and I probably, if I'm, being honest, I was probably going 75 and a 45. You know what I mean? I was just trying to get to Wyoming, and I pull over and I'm like, "Oh man, this is just about the worst situation," and,
Wow.
the cop comes to the car, and this is what was so interesting, was that he comes to the car and he's shining his flashlight in the back. He sees all my guns because I mean, I don't have them in cases or nothing. I mean, they're just laying on the back, on the back seat. And I mean, boxes of bullets on the floor, a crossbow in the passenger seat next to me. And he's like, uh, you're going pretty fast. And I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to get to Wyoming. He's like, license and registration. The dude lets me reach over my guns and my crossbow into the box, into the glove compartment. I grab my license and registration. I give it to him, and he's like, "Where are you going to Wyoming?" And I'm like, "I'm going to Star Valley. I'm like 2 hours away." And he goes, "Okay." Let me go run your plates. Comes back in and he's just like, we want you to be safe. So slow down. I'm not going to cite you. Good luck getting to Wyoming, and just slow down, okay? And he walked away. He gave it to me and walked away. And I was sitting there, and I just was like, okay, like if I'm pretty sure if I were a different race, that would have
That
gone
would,
about
yeah,
1,000 times worse. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
that's what people don't understand, and
yes,
that if those are all the experiences you have with the police are good. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
they are. In that circumstance, I was grateful.
hmm,
Great experience, very nice, could have cited me, you know what I mean,
yeah,
and
mhm,
didn't.
yes,
I'm very grateful. That doesn't happen all the time, and I've
no,
been in an
it doesn't.
experience where everyone had, like I said, and with some black guys from my basketball team, we
Yeah,
get pulled over, everyone out of the car,
hmm,
you know what I mean? Searching the car, searching us, for a minor traffic stop. And
yeah,
it's a different experience.
yeah. I mean, it's sad, but I always say you have bad cops, bad lawyers, good lawyers, bad judges, good judges, bad
Yeah.
people, good people. And I have to say that because I went to school with a lot of police officers, especially
Yeah.
in Massachusetts. I think I was the only person that wasn't a police officer on my master's, because it's like some type of bill that you get, like extra money if you take these courses.
Yeah.
And all of them basically were police officers except me. I think at that time I was just a paralegal. And
Oh, and I'll tell you what, like I have my family, I have some family with mental health issues, and there have been occasions where that family member that, cops have had to been called to
Mhm.
handle it. And they couldn't have been nicer. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? As far as,
some
like, they
people,
couldn't
yeah.
have handled it any better than they did.
Mhm. Yeah.
Some of them didn't do, there have been times where they haven't done a good job, but the ones that have were just A plus, like, did great job.
Mhm.
I've had police, my car get broken into, they come in and they're just as nice as can be, as helpful as can be, want to do a good job. I mean, and that's 98% of them. But man, that 2% is causing a lot of problems.
It does. Yeah, because they do things that people are like can't forget.
Yeah.
It's like I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And that's the really bad thing about this situation when you see stuff like that, because you're like all the good cops, you get this one person that did so much, or three or four, and we forget all the good stuff that happened with cops. Because I mean, there's some people that really want to help people and protect,
Yeah.
and then you got other officers that do other things and they take their power differently. Like they want to rule the world. I mean, they take it to the head, and
I think
it
there's
shouldn't
also
be like that.
I think there's also a portion of this when you're talking about there's kind of a mob mentality and us versus them mentality, and I think it doesn't just that's not just with police. I think that's with you see that in religion, you see that in
Yeah.
race, you see
Yes.
that in politics,
Yes.
you'll see that in political parties even. But the
Yes.
problem with the cops is that because of that, sometimes, you could have 1 or 2 bad cops in a 50 cop precinct, but if the 48, 49 others aren't reporting, like, no, and aren't reporting, it
Hmm.
makes them all bad,
Yeah.
because you gotta get that person out of there, and I think that's changing from what I've heard from some of my I have friends that are cops, and it does seem like it's getting better, at least here in California, it sounds like it's getting better. Um, but, uh but, it's a rough deal. Now, so talk to me more about some of the projects you've done in the arts.
Well, I did the movie Three Corners of Deception, and I've been in other people's movies, just some extra work, with Oprah, The Residents, what is it? Martin Luther King, I think, is a series that's coming out. I was in that.
Mm,
There's several other things, and Aretha Franklin series. I've been in that. I mean, I did a lot of extra work or some independent movies that I've been into as well.
mhm.
And What else? I'm actually currently working on The Boston Girls. That's the
Mm.
movie I yeah, it's copyright, so I can actually say what it is. But The Boston Girls is based on true events, and it's something originates with me, my upbringing, what I went through. But it also is about, five girls that, from a 10-year-old to 17 to about 34 years old, and what they had to go through and some different challenges in their life.
Mm.
And it's something that it registers with me because it's something that I think people don't see all the time, what these little cycles of things that happen.
Mm.
And you might see something similar, but this is based on true events. So it's actually something that actually did happen.
Mm.
And I'm just loving, and I finished writing the movie, but I'm not going to film until probably another year or two from now, because Three Corners Deception, hopefully everything goes well, publicly will be out this year,
Mm.
because it was out 2021. I want to say we had to go out for a little bit just to try. It was in about 12 theaters in 7 states, and that was during the pandemic. So we didn't want to fully release everything until after that. But the calling is calling. So we're just looking at what TV networks that we actually going to let it go publicly this year, and then everyone could see the movie.
That's awesome.
So we're still working with that.
Yeah. Now tell me, I'm fascinated with the process. I mean, you created this movie and made it. Is that right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
tell me about walk me through that process from conception to putting it on paper to actually getting it made. How does that work?
You know, I have to say, I'm an amateur because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Not putting the movie together. Writing, yes, know how to write, but I started writing maybe in 2012, but it wasn't really going to be a movie. It was
Mhm.
just going to be like a memoir or something. I was just writing of what I'm going through, because everybody kept saying you should make a movie or a book or something, because
Yeah.
people would not believe what you're going through with the judicial system
Uh-huh.
in what you're going through. And so it started there. But I didn't know what to do. I went and put some, I don't know, I was looking for camera people to do like a protesting.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I just wanted to do like a YouTube or something, because I started with YouTube's. I have a YouTube channel, and I started talking about what was going on with me and what was happening in the judicial system. And I would go get the CDs, because you can always ask for the CDs of the hearing, and I would play them on my YouTube channel and say, "Hey, you think this is right? Look what happened. You see the lying they're doing, and look
Mhm.
what they did. This is not legal, you guys." And it was just being they banned that because of me. Now you can't do that. Well, they were doing some really bad stuff to me,
Yeah.
and they didn't think it was going to come to light. But when I was doing that, I started thinking, I don't know, should I do like a movie or something? And I spoke to is Lance Laconey. He's a producer. And I talked to him, and he said, maybe you should get back into it.
Mm.
I don't know if I should get back into acting and stuff. And that's when I didn't really think about getting into it. And then I said, well, let me see. I don't know. People were reaching out, and I said, you know what? I'll try something. I went to New York. I did audition, got the gig, and then I started getting more of the gigs and started doing auditions, and that's what really opened the door for me getting it back into it, and then concentrating on what I was doing. Because one thing I didn't like about the industry, you're always at their calling, and I wanted to be empowered, and I didn't want to be, somebody that was taking power from me. So
Mm.
I said, you know what, I could probably do this movie. And then I spoke to Lance, and he was like, we can do it. Let's try to do something. And he's not about, knowing what to do. I would had to do all the research. He would just find the funding to try to help.
Mm.
And that's what basically he did. And then the manager, which a couple of the managers are executives, and they were helping and doing whatever. And I just said, hey, I just want to act in the movie. So I did everything with hiring camera people. I mean, I did everything in that way, and it just started coming together. Don't It wasn't something that I knew what I was doing. It was something that I was just doing.
Mm,
and seeing if it's gonna work. Making Writing a movie and then putting it to life, you bringing it to life, should I say, and just getting actors. And I knew the story. I knew what happened. I knew how it should be displayed. So it was good to me to audition these people because I knew the characters of those people. So
mm,
that was the easy part. It wasn't easy just to act in my own movie and be and play myself, because at that time that's not who I was anymore.
sure,
It was 10 years ago. At that time, I wasn't at that mindset,
sure.
and those feelings I had to bring. So that was difficult for me to do, because people say, "Oh, you can play yourself." It's not always the case, because your mindset was different then. And now you're like, "Okay, so I got to be angry and broken down," because at that time I was very broken
Mm,
mentally and physically and drawn, just it was just a very dark time for me.
I
But
bet.
I mean, enough research and getting to know people and talking and speaking to camera people and speaking, about cameras and learning about cameras and asking and getting a unity together, it could be done. And it was an editor, a cinematography person. I went through three of them, and my ride or die person is Will Garth, and he's my DP. I
Yeah,
think he just saved me because he's a very patient person when he teaches you how to do something, and we edited it together. I mean, this wasn't something that we went in the studio and did. We did this in my home. And so
wow.
we just, yeah, we put everything together. Like I said, we did everything. And then there's people that we outsource and we got to know in California, or they would tell me, "Oh, you should go these people," and we'll go for that person because it's an independent movie. So there's a lot of mistakes we made, but could they be fixed? We did the best we could on our very first feature film. And if you read anything or did any research, there was some critics. And one thing I can say, but some of them critics, they say, "How can you criticize something that's based on true events?" But I'm a critic, and I'm just gonna criticize. But this is a pretty darn good piece for someone who just first made a movie and
Yeah,
did not know.
yeah. Well, and
So,
that's the thing, right? Like, there's there are so many people. What I admire about your story here is that, there's a lot of people who, "Well, I don't know how to make a movie, so I'm not gonna do it," and you had this idea, concept you
mhm.
had for a long time, but, like, sometimes you just gotta do it and learn on the fly. I'm sure if you made another movie, you'd do it a completely different way than you did the
Yes,
first time, you know? But the thing is,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, but you did it, and now so tell me the process of getting it. You actually, it was played in theaters.
Yes, it was in 12 theaters in 7 states. I actually did a tour. So
So
I went to all these theaters. I did a
so
tour.
who set that up, and how did you get that all squared away?
I did cold calling to
Oh, really?
everybody. Yes, so I called the theaters and started asking who's the booking person,
Mm,
and it took a minute. I mean, just one thing. I mean, I'm good in telehealth. I mean, like not
yeah,
telehealth, but telemarketing. I want to say, and so I know how to speak to people and try to get to the main person. So I had that experience just in sales, and
right.
basically that's what that is. I mean, at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's still a business.
Mhm,
Either you got the money to put the movie in the theater or not. I
mm,
mean, it's not like, and at that time we're going through a pandemic. So the movies were being shut down, or they
right.
weren't getting a lot of people to go to the movies. So I think they were more open, like, okay, you want to put this independent movie? All right, here's the money you got to pay. Told the producer, they did whatever, and boom, here go the movies in the theaters. But I mean, I say it as easy as that, but it wasn't as easy just to get to the main person. That
Mm,
I will tell you. It's
mm,
a challenge because you're not going to call a theater and you're going to get to the main person who actually do the booking.
mhm,
So that doesn't work like that. So you're going to have to be very persistent, and you're going to have to, until you get the cell phone, just like any deal, till you
yeah,
get the cell phone of the person, and then you're on the calendar, it's a deal.
right. Yeah, wow. So, and when you go, so I assume that what happened was, as you said, you did a tour, audience came in, watched it, you were there for like a Q&A type thing, and did you how did it get
I
received by people who watched it?
I actually did that in Boston. I didn't sit in other theaters and did well. Wait a minute, let me think. I think New York. I did in New York.
Mm,
Um, it was very positive. Very
yeah,
positive. Unless you know what we actually did, I believe as what I was hearing is that this is like any other movie out there.
mhm, mhm,
Unless you knew, like, okay, that sound we kind of fuzzled it with this so you don't hear that noise because we couldn't do nothing about it. We
right,
tried. But
right,
far as that, or it really, I didn't really hear. I heard things like, I mean, if you like drama, depends what kind of movie you like.
yeah,
But it wasn't negative. And if it was anything that was negative, like I said, like the critics, they said you can hear something in the audio, but that's if you know what you're looking for. For
right,
the average person, you're not really gonna know. You're
right,
really not. And we sold out in Boston, but I'm from Boston, so
right, right.
um but like I said, you really wouldn't know. I mean, it's a long movie, 2 hours and 19 minutes, but one thing, it just kept going. It was a twist to the movie. So if you can miss something, if you need to watch it and realize, hey, let me see where this is going.
So
So
so if
people got
somebody
the plot.
so if somebody wants to see this movie, where
It
do they find it?
Well, if you could follow the page of Three Corners of Deception page, if you follow that page, once it's out
Mhm,
publicly, it will be released there, or the IMDb,
mhm,
or just Google Dr. Maleeka Clary, or I
mhm.
mention it on Dr. Maleeka Clary's show. I'm on 30 platforms with the show itself, so I will be broadcasting wherever, and it'll be commercials. It'll be the whole nine of people will be able to find this movie once it's out publicly, or what
Awesome,
network is actually playing it.
awesome, and then you are now you're in the, in the process of making the Boston Girls movie, right?
Once this is out publicly, then we will figure out how that. But we did finish the script, so yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
Thank you.
So, tell me if you what is your goal in the, entertainment industry? Do you have a specific goal in mind, or are you just going with the flow?
You know, I do this because I like to show your voice is very important. I
Mhm,
want to change something. Any movie or anything I do, it has something to do with social change or impact. And
mhm,
that's what I'm using my platform for.
mhm,
I'm using that for that. I'm not looking into the money because first of all, I don't make money doing none of this stuff.
mhm.
That's not what my goal is. Okay. My goal is to change something. If it's something I've been through or what I'm doing or what going through in your life and you can get something out of it, then I'm helping somebody. That's
Yeah,
what I'm about. And especially Dr. Maleeka Clary show with the positive psychology. And that right there, because it's it's not just, clinical psychology. I mean, it's not just clinical psychologists on there. It will also be lawyers and everybody else, actors, and what they go through as a person,
yeah,
and to explain to people that these are people and they've been through challenges, but they still stayed here in this world. And I want to help people because one thing about what I went through and how I developed this movie, most uh, people would not be able to handle that mentally,
oh, yeah,
because I was at my breaking point
yeah,
several times. But like I said, I'm a spiritual person, and I had to find my belief system when there's no human flesh that can help you. Because first, they don't even understand what you're going through, and
yeah,
how can they help you. So God has helped me through it, and so showing people what I went through, and I'm still standing here, and I'm
yeah,
still trying to educate and help people. Don't stop.
yeah,
Don't check out. You
yeah,
know what I mean? And that's the main thing that why I do what I do. So I want people to understand that do not give up in that way. And if you feel like that, you can reach out to Dr. Maleeka Clary, because I will try to my best to help you, or who can help you, or whatever situation. My story is about helping people deal with challenges in their life, either through film, in the entertainment industry, or by psychology. And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely the world needs more of that. I know I've had challenges in my life that have been pretty significant. And I've shared this on a few podcasts now. I don't share publicly some of the issues that I and my family have had to go through, my kids have had to go through, which it's been rough. But is simultaneously, while some of the worst things that could possibly happen have happened, I've had some of the greatest successes at the exact same time. And
Mhm.
that's just simply because, it the I always if some people think it's more compli it's too simple to say this, it's more complicated, but it's really not. In the morning when you wake up, like, for me, um, I go to the gym at 5 in the morning. I get my kids to school, I go to work as an attorney. I do this podcast. I've done pro wrestling. I do a lot. I'm busy all the time. Uh, when that alarm clock goes off at 4:45 in the morning and I'm about to get up, most times I don't want to, but I just
Mhm.
do. It's not about how I'm feeling. It's not
Mhm.
about how if I'm sad or if I'm happy, if I'm motivated or not. It's just discipline. And when you do those things, when you get up and do the things, even when you don't want to, that's the difference between success and failure, is doing it despite what's going on. And I think what's another thing I would say is that, uh, I for whatever reason, I don't know if this is just God has put this in my path or what, but for whatever reason, I tend to get a phone call when someone's dealing with some of the issues you've mentioned here. They're having a crisis, a faith crisis of some sort, or they're having a problem in their marriage. They're on the verge of divorce, or they're getting divorced, or something of that nature. And I think I've had some people call me when they're in really rough spots. And I think it's really important for people to remember that, you shouldn't forget the serious hole you would leave on this planet and in the people you love if you were to leave, you know, or if you were to give up. Um,
Mhm.
we all benefit when people choose to keep moving forward and try to live their life to their best potential, and we fall a little bit farther away from a successful world when people stop doing that, you know?
Mhm.
And, uh, and so I'm really grateful that you, have made it your life's work to not seek after the money, which isn't gonna help you anyway. Trust me. I've
Yeah.
That's another thing that's really funny. I shared this. I don't think I shared this on air. I shared this, with somebody recently. I always grew up, my family, you and I have a very similar background in that, we have some family members who struggled with, addiction.
Yes.
And, my dad still I've been very open about he struggled, and he's been sober for years, and he's a great guy now, and it just took him a long time to figure it out. But, uh, you know, no, I don't even know where I was going with that. Where was I going with that? Um,
I think changes when people have addictions in your family, and what ups and downs and things that can happen in the family because you have an individual that has addiction, and how it could, impact the family.
yeah, I know, and now I know where I was going with that. So
Mhm.
when I was growing up, because of my dad's addictions and some of the other things that were going on, neither one of my parents graduated college or anything like that. So money was kind of always an issue. And I remember thinking to myself as I was growing up, okay, so if I just don't do drugs and I make all the money, everything's gonna be fine. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I've been financially very blessed. I more so than I ever could have imagined, really, with the work that I do as an attorney. I'm very happy with what I do. I find very I find a lot of meaning in what I do,
Mhm.
and I get compensated very well. My kids live in a way different world than I did, because of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
But what I found so fascinating is for a long time, I've been an attorney now for 11 years. And I remember year 4 or 5 being like, or year 2 being like, if I just made X amount of dollars, then I'd be happy. And then I did that. And then I was like, if I just had the big house, then I'd do that. And then I had the big house. And then I was like, if I just had the nice car. And then I had the nice car. And then I was like, then it got to be ridiculous. It's like, if I had a pinball machine, that'd be really cool. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be like, I built a theater in my house, a movie theater. It'd be cool. And it is fun, by the way. But the point is that like, it was always another thing and it was cool for a little while. Then it was on to the next thing, but it would never
Yeah.
satisfied.
Yep.
And it
Yes.
was, and it wasn't until I realized I was like, okay, it's not about the things, it's about the experience.
Yeah.
And now I tend to be like, I want to do things with my kids.
Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
I want to go places with my kids. And it doesn't even have to be money. Flying a kite with my kids, taking them out and shooting hoops.
Mhm.
I go to my local church sometimes and just shoot baskets with my 2 boys, and I have a great time doing that. Or, going to the movies, something real basic like that. You get so much meaning out of that and all these things. So uh I know a lot of people who think, oh, if I just made the money, you know what I mean?
They do. They do. They think like that. Mhm.
And that doesn't really, I'm telling you, as someone who has been on the the lower middle income to a high wage earner, that there's not a lot of difference there if you're not having the experience that you want. So I really think it's great that, like, you seem to get that. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
I do.
And it's all about serving other people. And so
Yes.
so let me ask you, if you could spend, what would be, you do so many different things. If you could line out your perfect day, what do you think it would be?
You know, actually getting up,
Mm,
that's perfect enough, and knowing that all my children got up, because I have my children that stay here, but my son, we share, custody going back and forth. So not knowing if he got up this morning. So I do my chat line. We all do a chat line in the morning or just every day to say I love you to each other. And so I think that's perfect to me.
mm,
Whatever's going to happen is happen. I mean,
mm,
that's my main thing. I'm a very family person, and similar to what you said, there's things that I do that, but I am based on that. I mean, that's like a big thing with me, and that's a perfect day to me. It's just to know that they're all right. They woke up. What's going on during the day? I'm not sure, but we all said I love you, and that's all you gotta take. Because even with my dad, before he died, I think a week before, I said I love you. Not many people get that. And we weren't like raised on I love you all the time. My dad did say it, but it wasn't like that all the time back then. I mean, parents wasn't raising your kids say I love you and doing all that. So
yeah,
I changed that dynamics with my family. And some
yeah,
people are still stuck in those conditions because it just wasn't something was done.
yeah,
So to me, a perfect day is getting up and being able to say that and knowing I heard I love you. And every one of us on that chat line, my children said I love you to each other. And that's perfect to me.
yeah.
Anything else, it's just whatever happens that day is what happens that day. But that's a perfect day to me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so great. I ask everybody, there's a few questions I ask everybody on a podcast, and I want to ask you, the first thing would be, what would you say, if you could pick one thing, was your biggest success in life?
Is having all my children and was able to see them, you know, form out like that. kind of perfect to me. That was my biggest accomplishment because, it could have went different ways, but they were healthy and they were okay. And I prayed about that. I mean, I didn't do anything for it not to be, but in life, sometimes when you have children, they're either planned or not planned, but you want children, but sometimes it may not be a greatest setting, but you did what you did to have the child. So you just hope that they're healthy and they're okay. And I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest accomplishment to me is that
Yeah.
I actually had three healthy children.
No, that's great. So you said you're like, "Oh, failure." You don't like the word failure, but I'm going to ask you,
No.
what
Mm-mm.
would you say if I ask the question, what would you say was your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Well, I think when I said to you, I had a failed marriage,
Mm,
that to me is not a failure. It was a failed marriage because no matter how you look at it, it takes two to dance. And
mhm,
either I acknowledge what I did wrong, not sure, can't speak about what that person did wrong, but it still didn't work.
mhm.
So it was a failed marriage. And
Sure.
so I'm not, I mean, that's the only thing that I think that I failed at because I had to have another person help.
Mm,
And because that other person didn't help to stay,
mhm.
then it basically failed for us.
Yeah.
Now I
Well,
cannot say it won't fail again when I remarry.
mhm,
No, but what I learned from it is that two people, no matter how you look at it, if you have a religion, you guys should seek the same.
mhm.
Or at least be open minded for the other person. Like if I'm gonna marry somebody, my belief system with them, they got to be on the same level. You got to believe in God, Jesus. You got to believe in it. You got
Mm,
to be spiritual. You got to believe in what I'm believing. Because
yeah,
if that's at the beginning, we're gonna go different directions. We're
yeah,
already we're already going different directions then, and
yeah,
and I think that's what's something that going forward I have to make sure that we're on the same system. And if we're not, then we need not to be together. We have to be on the same system because we have to be able to seek more than just the human flesh when we can't see each other.
yeah. That's interesting. My parents were a mixed religion, marriage when they got married. So, my dad was Jewish, my mom was Mormon, and, it did create some conflict for a while. My dad eventually did convert, so
Yeah, me
he's a
too.
Christian, a
Hmm.
Mormon Christian, and so is my mom, and that's what we were all raised that way, and I don't ever remember that ever being, like a conflict of whether we should be raised Jewish or whether we should be raised Mormon. I think it was just always that way. We were always raised Mormon. But my mom would agree with you even to this point. They're still together. They've been together over 40 years. And
Hmm.
but I think my mom would tell somebody, no, you want to marry someone with the same faith just because
Yeah.
it does create problems. Now, here's the thing that I also find really interesting, and something I've learned over the course of my time. You know, um, that may not even be enough, and let me tell you why. I know a lot of people who they got married young. Mormons tend to get married young, in their 20s, early 20s usually. Well, if all you have at that time is a physical attraction and a spiritual attraction, it's not a guarantee. In fact, by the numbers, it's almost certain that at some point someone may have some sort of crisis in that religion, right? Like maybe they don't want to be that religion anymore. Well, what happens then? If you don't have other stuff in common, if you don't have other things that you can go on, what happens if, because listen, you're in you're different. You don't look the same in your 40s and 50s that you do in your 20s. So the physical
Hmm.
attraction is going to change. If the religious attraction changes, what else do you have?
Hmm.
It's an
Yeah.
interesting dichotomy there to figure that out. But
But see, this is the thing about it. What I really mean is that the human flesh, we argue, we tend to argue, we bicker, we fight.
right.
We have to sit back And this is what I mean by failed, is that we as human beings together need to take it from us and give it to our faith.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Because
sure.
that's what I mean. Because if you got you're having a situation that you're just, that's all you're doing. You, if you have someone that your belief system is stronger than what you're doing, then both of you are going to get on your knees and pray together.
Mhm.
You're bringing it together and you're releasing it
Yeah,
together, because you know it's so difficult for this person to see your values and this person to see your views. You just you're human, but you're not giving it to God. Give it to God, so then you guys can not see it and let him fix it for you. That's what I mean. I
yeah,
need that. That's who I'm gonna marry, because
yeah,
I'm going to argue. You're going to argue. We're going
sure.
to see things differently. But if we take it from us and we pray about it and get on our knees together, that's what I don't have. That's
Yeah,
what I mean. That's something that you don't get all the time.
yeah, no,
And
that's true.
you know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. Okay, we're going to stay together because we took it from us and we both are on our knees praying, God help us both so
Yeah.
we can see this and give us the strength, and we're doing it together. Yeah, yeah.
No,
That's what I'm
that's
talking about right
huge. I
there.
can tell you that's huge. When you're on the same page in your religion, it's hard to break that. It's hard to break that. And the cool thing about the beauty of the Christian religion,
Hmm.
whatever Christian denomination you are, the concept of atonement, the concept that you can make a mistake and through Jesus's
Yes,
sacrifice, you
that's
can
right.
be forgiven, and not only be forgiven, but if there's something you've done that you can't repay, that through that atonement, it can be healed, is a beautiful concept that would help anyone in marriage, if
Yes.
you have faith in it. And so that's awesome. Last question I wanna ask you. This is a question I ask everybody. Someday down the road, you're gonna pass away and there's gonna be a funeral, and when you have your funeral, there'll be a eulogy. Uh, what would be the one thing you hope someone would say in your eulogy about you?
Oh, she loved helping people. She loved people.
Yeah.
That's one thing about her. She always wanted to change something.
Mhm.
Always, and it's interesting that you said that, because I did speak on about someone, a couple people, and I talked about some of my relatives have died over the years. And I said, it's what you leave, it's what people think of you, how you leave it.
Yeah,
And if you are mean, negative individual, that's probably going to come out.
yeah,
If you're a person who was all selfish and you was money hungry, didn't really care about anybody, that's probably going to come out.
yeah,
And I had to speak about some individual, and I say, look, you know, this person is this, but we never valued this part of her because we didn't let her know that part, but
yeah,
she let us know about this part about her. That's the expression she left. That's the impression she left. So to me, it is about how you live your life here, is what will someone say about you. And to me, always willing to help somebody, always will, and family was always first to her, always. And she, like a life, she loves a life. And I know that's what would be told, because I started this way before. I mean, I probably started helping people at 8 years old when they were being bullied. The
yeah,
girl was cross-eyed, and somebody used to bully her because she was cross-eyed. Well, I could look like a bully to the other person because I would jump in and say, you should do that. So I knew where I was going with helping other people that wouldn't help themselves or didn't have the confidence to help themselves. And I think I was told by several of my family members, you need to stop doing that. Something's going to happen to you
yeah,
because you always helping somebody. But you know what? That's just part of it. I mean, and so I think that's what, actually I don't think, I actually know that people will say that about me. So,
Good. Well, that's awesome. Well, Dr. Maleeka Clary, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. It's been amazing, and I definitely where can we find your talk show?
oh, Dr. Maleeka Clary show on the Bold and Brave TV network. I'm on Spotify, Apple, I think it's podcast, Apple
Yeah,
Podcasts, iHeart, Amazon Fire. You could just Google me.
yeah,
I'm on 30 platforms international, around the world: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, or you go to my website, Dr. Maleeka Clary. Um, .com, or just Wikipedia me. I mean,
yeah.
it's there. Yeah, it's all over there.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to when 3 degrees of deception. Is that what it's called? 3 degrees.
Three corners of
Three
three
corners.
corners of deception.
When
It's all good.
when Three Corners of Deception comes out, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Thank
And
you.
when you get Boston Girls ready to go, let's have you back. Let's talk about it. Let's get it ready.
Oh
We'll
yes.
promote it for you. I'd love to follow your work and see how it goes. And I'm going to definitely be watching the
You.
Dr. Maleeka Clary show, and I love all the positive mindset stuff. It's so important. It
Thank
really
you.
is. And so I'm glad you're doing that work. This is the part where I tell everybody, if you've made it this far into the episode, subscribe. We got a lot of cool things coming up. We've got a lot of people set that are going to be really interesting. So keep following, and Dr. Maleeka Clary, I really appreciate you being a part of the process. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. All right.
Thank
We'll
you.
we'll talk to you later.
All right.